Welcome into this week's edition of the Jackson Sun High School Football Podcast here on jacksonsun.com. I am high school sports columnist Brandon Shields here with our other sports writer Michael Odom, here discussing high school football going into week 9 of the regular season. A couple weeks left. Region playoff races starting to heat up and everything. We'll have stuff about that in the paper this week. But first things first, as we're talking about this week's games and stuff, there's, in my opinion, and I imagine a lot of people's opinions, one obvious game of the week this week as we go into this week's schedule. And when you have number 1 against number 2 in the same classification in one state playing each other, it's hard to make an argument against that one for being game of the week. But that's what we got with Union City going to Dresden. It's going to be hyped up. It was a big game last year. And obviously both teams coming in undefeated. Union City, Michael, is coming in with a few injuries. Their quarterback's out for the year. Their running back's out for the year. They've had a lineman who is hurt. He could be back. They're trying to work him back in. We had Mike Hutchins of the Union City Daily Messenger on our radio show last night. He said they're trying to work him back in. A couple other players are hurt. Do these injuries, do you think that they could have enough of an effect on Union City that Dresden's just going to roll over them like they've rolled over everybody else so far this year?
No, because Union City's got that winning mentality. I mean, the past 2 years, they've continually won football games until Peabody upset them in the playoffs last year. So they know how to win games. And, I think they can lose a piece or two and still be able to be successful. Now, is it going to be in the same level that they were? No, but Dresden's going to still have to bring their best and play their A game if they're going to think they're going to win this one.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying. I mean, one, and for a couple of different reasons. One, Union City, they haven't won 37 straight regular season games based on 11 players. They've got a good rotation, had a good rotation in over the last 3 or 4 years of players just kind of working in. Most of their wins have been by blowout, so their starters haven't been needed for much of the second half, so the younger guys are getting experience. So the guys are bringing in, it's not like they're coming in just fresh off the bench with no experience whatsoever. Also, they've had a couple of weeks to get used to this, and we've kind of noticed for Union City over the last few years, we kind of think, okay, well, they lost this player, so they're about to take a downturn. They lose this player, they're going to take a downturn. They just replace them. If there's any program in West Tennessee that's become a football factory, I mean, there's about 5 or 6 that we can kind of call that. Union City, definitely right now, is the factory. And that's leading the area in production. And I don't know, I just kind of think that Dresden's in for I still think Dresden's going to win, but I know you were telling me before we started this about a guy you were having a conversation with in Middle Tennessee that's asking, is Dresden going to beat them as bad as they're beating Peabody, Greenfield, Humboldt, and everybody else? I personally don't see that happening.
No, I think Dresden can win by 1 or 2 touchdowns, but any more than that, if you come back on Friday night and the score, Dresden wins by 30 points, I'll be very surprised.
Yeah. But one thing we can probably agree on, and I think everybody listening would agree on this, just based on the fact that they've both beaten Peabody. Have they both beaten Humboldt, or does Humboldt still need to play Dresden? I think they still need to play Dresden. Yeah. But those are the two main, and Union City still needs to play Lake County. But otherwise, they've beaten everybody else in the region. So we can guarantee this is pretty much going to be the region championship game. There are 3 other games going on this week that could be region championship games, but it's not set in stone because of other games still need to be played and stuff like that. So out of these 3 games, Michael, I'm going to let you make a choice, and then I'll either agree or disagree with you. But out of these 3 games, which one has the best chance of being, when we look back on the season, the region championship game? Northside at Haywood in Region 7 4A, Waverly at Scotts Hill in Region 5 2A, and Liberty. I did say Waverly at Scotts Hill? Mm-hmm. Okay, because right now when I said Liberty, I felt like I'd said it recently. Or Liberty at South Gibson, Region 7 3A.
Well, you brought up the guy I talked to last night, and he also asked me, can South Gibson run the table? Mm-hmm. and I didn't think so. So, my thought of the district championship is going to be Northside and Haywood. Northside's coming off a come-from-behind win over Hardin County, where they didn't play the best. 6 personal foul penalties, most of them face masks. Mental mistakes that kind of cost them, a fumble right there at the end zone. To where Haywood's coming off their first loss of the season, played a much bigger Oakland team, and I think they kind of got a little beat up. Some players, some of Oakland's players a little more physical than Haywood's used to. So is Haywood able to rebound and continue their undefeated district record, or is Northside going to be able to knock them off and stay with one loss and kind of tie things up for that one spot?
Yeah, I will say this. I mean, this is an important game. If Northside wins, I guess that would guarantee them the championship, assuming I think they would just need to win. Well, they would need to win out. If Haywood wins, they just need one more game to get the championship because they own every tiebreaker over everybody else that could have it. But there's a lot of scenarios in that region 7-4-8 where different teams could win. I mean, it's mainly these two. I think Lexington and Hardin County both have a chance to kind of back in there. But both of these teams, Northside and Haywood, have to lose out after this game. I'll go with Waverly Scotts Hill. I know Scotts Hill's coming in with that loss to Riverside, but it wouldn't shock me one bit if Riverside loses this week to Hickman County and or to Waverly the following week, and it kind of knocks them out of, or week 11, knocks them out of contention for the championship. That's the only way Scotts Hill can win it at this point. Riverside needs to take another loss. Now, I think there's definitely an opportunity for that. But the fact that Scottsdale did lose that game does kind of concern me if I'm a Scottsdale fan, just because that was, I think most people can agree for the most part that was not a game that Scottsdale should have lost. But, I mean, Riverside, they're 4-3 right now, so it's not like they're a terrible team. Just with the way things have gone, you just didn't expect that going in. We talked about that last week. Speaking of teams who have played better or worse than what you're expecting, McKenzie and Jackson Christian are both coming into their game this week in McKenzie, kind of limping in, kind of underperforming compared to what I was thinking they were going to do this year. McKenzie's coming in on a 4-game losing streak. Jackson Christian's coming in with a 1-6 record. Maybe I didn't expect them to be much better than that, but I expect them to compete a little better than what they've done in certain games. Both of these teams need some momentum. Who do you think gets that momentum this week, and will they be able to utilize that momentum for the rest of the season?
I think part of Jackson Christian's problem is the Division II teams that they've put on their schedule early, the Davidson Academies, the DCAs. Those are going to be teams hard to compete with. And I know that's not, Roland's fault.
Right.
So he's got to kind of come in and hopefully next year he'll put a schedule together that's more to the talent level of Jackson Christian. And in those games you get beat up and you don't get confidence. And, if you're able to compete, then you want to be able to be tested. But Jackson Christian's not in a position right now as a program where they're saying we're competing for district titles or region titles and for deep playoff runs. They're just trying to grow. And so they need some opponents that they can grow against. And I don't think getting beat up has helped. So, with that said, they've got some opponents still to go. They still have to play Gibson County. They still have to play this McKenzie game. Mm-hmm. I think that they have the better chance of gaining momentum. To where McKenzie has lost to some teams they should have beaten, like TCA. I didn't see that coming. Why did they shouldn't have lost to TCA?
Right.
They have the
definitely
pieces.
By 21 points.
Exactly. So I think Jackson Christian's the one with the better chance of gaining momentum.
Yeah. It's hard to disagree with that. Also, when you look at the fact that McKenzie has Riverside next week, that game looks a little more difficult than on paper maybe it should. And honestly, McKenzie's Week 11 opponent kind of escapes me at this point. I apologize for that. It's a region game. I think it's Halls. I think they end with Halls.
It might be.
Yeah, so, yeah, definitely an important game for both of those teams. And it's an important week in that region with that game and a game that's kind of going to fly under the radar for a lot of people this week. The TCA Gibson County game, and honestly, and I may be taking your choice for this part of the discussion, Michael, but this one is about just kind of what is the biggest game flying under the radar this week. Yep, it was Halls. Good. McKenzie does end the regular season with Halls, but underrated game of the week. Everybody's going to be talking about the Dresden and Union City game, the Haywood Northside matchup, Scottsdale Waverly, all those matchups. What do you think is going to be a really good game that kind of not a lot of people are going to be paying attention to?
And I talked about this on the radio on Monday that'll be broadcast on Friday, that it's these two games in Region 6-2A with McKenzie and Jackson Christian and TCA in Gibson County. Right. I think both of those are kind of big. I mean, we know who the number one team is in the region, and that's going to be Adamsville. There's no question about that. But 2, 3, 4 are all wide open. And I think any of the other 5 could take those 3 positions, which is going to leave two teams at home. So I think both of these. Can TCA continue momentum and go up to Gibson County and get a win? Or Gibson County won their first region game in 2 years. Can they turn around and get a second one and try and build some momentum?
Right.
And we've already talked about Jackson Christian and McKenzie. So there's some questions, but I think both of those have the potential to be big games for those teams.
My pick, since you went with that one, I'll kind of call an audible real quick, and I'm going to go with Chester County at Hardin County. And here's the reason for that. I keep up with margins of victories and average margin of victories for each team. Chester County on the field actually has when you add in the final scores of the games, not the fact that they forfeited a couple of wins, their average margin of victory for games is actually 5.86. Hardin County is actually 2.43. So both of these teams are accustomed to playing close games down to the wire. So I think the fact that both teams play teams close, no matter what either they play up or they play down to their competition, I think that means that they'll have a close matchup. We got about a minute and a half left. Michael, just kind of there's one game that's going to fly under everybody's radar. Two teams that in past decades have been proud programs around here, Southside and Westview. They're both coming into their matchup against each other with winless records. Southside's 0-7. Westview is 0-8. We're not going to break down who's going to win or lose or anything like that, but with 0 for records, which team has the most to lose in this one?
That's a tough question.
Yes.
Because they both have a lot to lose. Neither team wants to go 0 for in their on the season. Westview is after this they'll only have one game left to play. Right. Southside's got 2. I know one of those is Liberty. Mm-hmm. Not who you want to see on the schedule, especially after just playing.
The other one's Milan.
Oh yeah, Milan and Liberty. After just playing Blackman, I think those are 2 tough games to end with. You're wanting something to build on for next year. You're wanting these younger freshmen, sophomore, and juniors to show them we have the potential to win games.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good pick. I'll say Westview just because if they don't win this one, they've got the week off, and then they've got McNary, who, even though one of them's a forfeit, they still are a 4-win team coming into this game. So definitely want to get a win. Thanks for listening, y'all. Good luck to your team, and have fun this week.